The views expressed on this show are those of the host, guests, and callers, and not those of radio station KICK, Vision Communications Incorporated, its management, or advertisers. Vision Communications Incorporated is not responsible for the validity or accuracy of information presented on this program.
Welcome, and thank you for entering at the Red Door. Today you'll be hearing from Father Jos from St. James Episcopal Church of Springfield. Feel free to listen in. The conversation starts now.
Welcome to the Red Door Conversations. Wherever you are right now, be safe and be blessed. You are the beloved of God, no matter who says otherwise. And that's what we believe, and that's what we want to believe. And so believe it. In the core of your heart, believe you are the beloved of God. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Father Jos, priest at St. James Episcopal Church in Springfield, Missouri. And today I have Father Tim Coppinger and Dr. Kathleen Jackson joining me in this conversation on being the lighthouse. Father Tim Coppinger is a priest in charge of the Episcopal churches of the Ozarks and traveling to different churches in this area. And he had been doing this ministry for quite some time. Welcome, Father Tim.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And Dr. Kathleen Jackson, she is a retired nurse and taught at different places, and she retired as a dean of the Cox College. Am I right?
That's correct.
And she has been a lifelong Episcopalian and member of St. James Episcopal Church. And thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And for our conversation today, we are going to look at being a lighthouse. But before we go into that conversation, I do need to say something. At what happened at the end of the last Sunday's conversation, I said to everybody to please walk into the Red Door. And Father Tim told me, don't ever walk into the Red Door, and you will be hurt. Walk through the Red Door.
That's right.
So I got to say that. Thank you, Father Tim, for telling me that. You know, me having this second language, English, sometimes I get into all kinds of trouble for that reason. I don't know whether it is into, through, what. But at least I hope you get the idea if I say this again, and I'm likely to say this again, that walk into the Red Door. So hear me out. What I mean is walk through the Red Door to the other side and catch me every time if I do.
It's like the old joke. Two men walked into a bar, the third one ducked.
That's right. That's what is going to happen. So do not walk into the door, walk through the door and enter into the conversations that are happening behind the door. And you are welcome. And no matter what thought you have or how you are thinking about the scriptures, about the church, your experience is valuable. And behind the Red Door, we have all these conversations. And so for today, I want to focus on Matthew chapter 5, where we speak about you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of this world. And so it's one of the favorite scriptures that I have. You are light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works. And I really want to emphasize on that word. The light is seen by the good works that you do. And there are a lot of conversations when we speak about good works. People ask the question, do you have to do good works to earn salvation? Or is that the point at all? Is that what you hear when you hear, let your light be shining in this world by your good works? So what do you hear when you hear that word?
I think if you're following Jesus, I think it's a little cart before the horse. If you're actually in line with and in love with Jesus, the good works come. Mm-hmm. It's not that you have to produce the good works. It's that it's a natural consequence of being a follower of Jesus, as these good works will shine in you. So that
yeah. Father Tim.
Right. Well, when we add salt to food, as long as we do it in the appropriate amount, which for many of us seems to be less and less, but when we add salt to food, it gives dimension. It brings out flavor in the food.
Yeah.
Salt all by itself would be horrible if that's what we had to eat. But when we use it in the proper amounts, it makes food eating food all that much greater an experience. Same way with light. When light is cast into a room, it gives dimension to the objects of the room. And it allows us to see them where they are and not run blindly into them, but then creates, brings out color and that sort of thing. And so as followers, when Jesus tells us to be salt and light, we're not doing things of our own. We're helping through the Holy Spirit and through Christ's guidance to bring out the beauty in life, to bring out good, to bring out all sorts of great things that God intends for us to know and to experience by His love.
Yeah. When we speak about light, one of the things that comes to my mind is I grew up in the southern part of India. And we didn't have electricity until I was in the 7th or 8th grade, if I remember. And the first time when we got power, we had one light bulb in each room, and so there was no ambient lighting anywhere. There is no light and shadow and shade and different places. That's not how I grew up. And so when I came to the United States some 20-some years ago, I walk into my house and there were lamps all over the place in the house. There was not one light, there were 10 lights. And I used to think at the time, gee, I cannot believe this. There is no light in this place, because I hadn't still grown to actually appreciate and enjoy the dimensions of light. It's when you said the dimensions of light that I just remembered that. The dimensions of light is just incredible. If we can actually look into the dimensions of light, it is fascinating, and it can help us to actually appreciate beauty. And so when I read this scripture, that's one of the things that comes to my mind, is the dimension, the different ways the light actually falls into different places. I have a friend in Arkansas. He is Baha'i, whom I call one of the best Episcopalians and one of the best Christians I've ever met is a Baha'i. And recently, he had been taking pictures of the moon from different angles and posting it on the web. And I see that, and I think the dimension, the way that moon looks, shining, it's just incredible, just incredible. And I wonder, can we be that the light of Christ can shine on Kathleen and the world will see a different light of God or a different personality of God in you? How would that be?
Well, I think it comes to, I need to accept that for myself in order to reflect it. I need to, and it kind of goes back to some of our previous conversations about, accepting the fact that God really does love me, and that's a worthy thing, and that I have the ability, the right, the responsibility, whatever you want to call it, to reflect that out. And what occurs to me is sometimes I think there's again, an intentionality to it. As I became more of a leader in nursing, I tend to be a very introverted person, and I would walk into the hospital and I'd be thinking about things, and have a very serious look on my face. And people would say, "Are you angry? Are you upset with us?" And I was like, "No, what do you," that came out of nowhere for me. And I had to learn to let my acceptance roll out, saying, I am open to you coming and talking to me. I am here for you. And it took some intentionality to put a different expression on my face. And so, again, I really think Christianity is yes, the burden is light, but we have to still be very intentional.
Right. What do you think, Father Tim? Has Christianity lost the saltiness of it?
Oh boy, you would ask me that question.
Yes.
In some senses, yes. I would say that's possible. Not entirely, but sadly, we have become so concerned about not offending people that we end up, it's like what they once said about the Mississippi River. It was a mile wide and a foot deep. And do we lose our depth of being if we're not intentional, as we said? And so often I think we believe that Christ calls us to be our brightest and best all the time, and we really understand that the world is not always like that. That we can be more honest if we are honest to ourselves and saying, I struggle as a person. And maybe we get more credibility from others when they realize that if we as leaders within our congregations or our communities, if they understand our own struggling, and maybe we even gain a little bit more credibility by honestly being human and not trying to be superhuman. And so I think we just need to look at what saltiness really means for our time today, and maybe it does change as generations pass and as decades pass. I don't. That's one of those big questions that I certainly don't have the complete answer to.
And I think that's the same thing for me. People ask me this question all the time. That I don't believe in the Christianity that you speak about, or when I look around, I don't find you guys like Jesus. You have lost the saltiness of your faith or what you preach. You don't live the scripture. Lots of people have been hurt by that. I've heard people say that, why don't you go to church? Why are you not part of a community of believers in Jesus Christ? They always, I've heard them say this, that I'm church hurt. I'm hurt by something that's going on in the church. And you guys do not have the salt and the light that you speak Jesus seems to have asked you to be. And then I'm lost for words, because I can see the reasons why people are hurt. And I can see why they feel when they walk into a church community, they don't feel welcomed and loved and accepted for who they are. Yeah, certainly they do feel hurt. And we have barriers. We have all kinds of reasons why someone cannot belong to us. I've heard this, I'm not necessarily saying for me or for the Episcopalians, but several people I've met who are hurt by the churches, that's where they are. That they have felt that who they are, that's not what welcomes. And so I want to say the church has, in a way, maybe it's a broad stroke, the church has lost its saltiness. And it may be something that I might get stoned for saying so. Christianity has lost its saltiness, its light. Christianity is not following what Jesus said and himself asked his followers to do. So from my perspective, I think we have focused too much on the law and posting too many laws out there for people to conform to, while Jesus is someone who has broken the law or who has fulfilled the law. I'm going to get stoned for sure for saying that Jesus has broken the law, but I do think he did. Would you agree?
Oh, I would agree. I think, as you were talking, I'm thinking with hurt people who have been hurt by doctrines of the church or what they perceive to be the law, that excludes them. If we talk about our faith, we may be applying our nails to the chalkboard. And that's where just demonstrating, and again, just that gentle reflection of light can be so much more powerful. I was thinking of a woman when I was a clinical nurse specialist in a pediatric unit. The nurses called me one day and they said, "We have a difficult mother." And when they said difficult mother, I knew what that meant. They had stopped listening to her. She was
Kathleen, before you continue that story, I want to hear that story completely, but we've got to take a break, and I want to go back to that's okay. I want to go back to that story. If you will just hold on to that story, because I think it's worth for us to hearing that particular that journey of that mother. So you are listening to the Red Door Conversations, because this program is supported by the Episcopal Church near you, and they are all over the place. Simply Google it. Episcopalians ask questions, and we seek answers, and as many questions we ask, we don't have that many answers for it, but then we are comfortable living in the ambiguity of our life. We question, we don't understand, we don't know where the Lord is in the midst of all these questions that we ask, but we know one thing for 100% sure is that we are the beloved of God and we are loved by God. So if you'd like to know more about us, visit us on the web at thereddoor.org. That is www.thereddoor.org, and you can email us, and our email address is enter@thereddoor.org. Yes, you heard it right. That is enter@thereddoor.org. lighthouse.org. We are going to take a break. We'll be back very soon. Thank you for listening to us.
Every Sunday morning, an Episcopal church near you has a door open for you. They welcome everyone, and everyone has a place to serve and be served. Listen to the Red Door Conversations on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. on KICK. Eavesdrop on the talks taking place behind the doors of the Episcopal Church. Join them. Be free and be open. Be affirmed and loved for being you. Listen to the Red Door on the radio or on iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify. Search for the Red Door, www.thereddoor.org.
Welcome back to the Conversations. When we entered that segment just a few minutes back, I said the email address as enter@thereddoor.org. Father Tim brought my attention to it, and so I want you to know the email address clearly. Enter, ENTER, @thereddoor.org. So we are going back to this conversation about the lighthouse. And so, but first, before we go into further conversation, I want to continue the story Dr. Kathleen had been sharing with us before the break. Please continue.
There was a time when I was a clinical nurse specialist for a pediatric unit, and the nurses called me one day because they were having trouble with a mother they had classified as a difficult mother. And what that meant to me was they had stopped listening to her. And so they wanted me to go talk to her and see if I could help. So I walked in and just listened to her story. And she was very agitated. She had a baby in her arms and she was bouncing the baby up and down, and the baby was becoming agitated because she was agitated. And she knew clearly that the nurses had judged her, that had said she was a bad mother. And this, in her conversation, that was very clear to me. And so I asked her if I could hold her baby. And I held her baby and I swayed the baby back and forth in a gesture I knew would be, and the baby calmed down. Mm-hmm. And I never said one word to her about, this is the way to comfort your baby. This is the way to deal. I just listened to her story and modeled a behavior that I hoped would help her, mm-hmm. and would calm the situation down. And as we talk about reflecting the light, that to me is reflecting the light. It's not saying, they're right, you're a problem. Mm-hmm. It's saying, this is the way to just bring some peace to this situation so we can move on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. Reflecting the light, I think that is what it is. Anne Lamott is an American novelist and a non-fiction writer. She is also a political activist and a public speaker and a writer. And in her book, Traveling Mercies, and Some Thoughts on Faith, she says, the thing about light is that it really isn't yours. Light isn't yours. It is what you gather and shine back. And it gets more power from reflectiveness, which you were talking about. If you sit still and take it in, it fills your cup. And then you can give it of yourself. And then she continues, lighthouses don't go running all over the island looking for the boats to save. Which I think it is fantastic. Lighthouses are not traveling all over the place. Which boat needs to be saved? Which boat needs? It stands in one place and reflects the light. They just stand there shining. When we were talking in this conversation, Father Mark, who was in this conversation in the last two talks we had, Father Mark brought up a question, and that question was this: are we lighthouse or are we spotlights? As Christians, are we the lighthouses or are we the spotlights that putting lights on the sinners and the failed people and people who have not done things right and people who have gone astray and telling them they are all lost? What do you think, Father Tim?
Well, I just now another image similar to came to mind. A spotlight points a finger.
Yes.
And a lighthouse is like someone standing with their arms spread saying, look around.
Yeah.
Look around.
Yeah.
And I think the less finger pointing we can do. I mean, there comes times when that must be the way in which a situation is handled. But if we can spend more of our time spreading our arms out to people saying, look about you, look what is here, look how God is here, and look how God is here on your behalf, then maybe the light that is cast is going to be much more welcomed than, a spotlight shined in somebody's face.
But I think we all have the temptation to actually spotlight.
Oh, yes.
Because I think it makes us feel better. I've heard, I used to say this, I've heard this, people say, that's how I learned this, you don't have to be wrong for me to be right.
That's right.
That's right.
And I think it's hard.
If I point the light at somebody else, then that means I'm out of the light.
Yes, there you go, which is true. Yeah,
Good point.
yeah, I can point someone and escape all that is within me and about me because it's all on you.
Right.
Yeah, I think faith requires us to be able to put the light on ourselves in that process. Just as much as we shine, if we can put that spotlight to ourselves, I think that would be a better way of practicing faith, living life.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask this. I had been thinking about this for quite some time. Do we have to be intentional about being the light? Can you be unintentional and be a light in this world? Was Jesus intentional or unintentional? What do you think? Being a lighthouse, it's hard because you have to stand still. And standing still is difficult. Because if I stand still, I have to reflect. And I've heard this many times when I go for silent retreats, when I ask people, tell people that we will have a silent day where you have to sit quiet and listen to yourself, see yourself, which is standing still.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
I guess I would have a hard time seeing Jesus as being not intentional
Okay?
because of his short period of ministry. It did seem to me from reading the script, and I'm in a room full of ministers, so they can tell me I'm wrong, but it seems like he was very intentional about how he used his life and used his ministry. But what was interesting, just what brought to mind when you were talking about that, was that he would also go off and take a rest.
Mm-hmm.
He would also separate himself from people. He would find times not to be reflecting God or presenting God.
Mm-hmm.
He took his moments to take his rest.
Mm-hmm.
So is that
Yeah.
somewhat what you mean?
Yeah,
about maybe
yeah.
not being intentional all the time?
No, you have to take rest. Yes, Father Tim.
Oh, I was just thinking about, there are times when self-awareness is absolutely necessary, and there are times when self-awareness can actually become an obstacle to if I am so focused on myself, then, perhaps I'm not focusing on the needs around me. But then, there are other times when, I need to be aware of what I'm saying, how I'm acting, what I'm doing, and how I'm feeling at that moment in order to be effective. So, self-awareness and intentionality, I think at times can kind of go hand in glove in accomplishing what we're being called to do.
Right. I do believe that intentionality, it's very important. And at the same time, yes, you do need to take rest. You do need to go away. You do need to spend time by yourself and recharge. And that is very important for us to be genuinely be effective, to shine, in the world. I do think that doesn't mean we got to be not shining Christ, or Christ cannot shine on us. Even in that silent moment when I'm standing still, God is still shining on me. And I think that's what people do not believe. Many times I think us to actually trust that God is still shining on us even when we are not doing anything.
Yeah.
And if I don't do anything, I get to the point that I think, I'm being ineffective. I got to actually change the world myself. I have to do something about it. I don't think I have to do something about it. I think the Lord is quite capable of doing something about it if I can just let God do it. I worked with Mother Teresa when I was in India for some time. And so this is one of the things that I saw. She was not interested in actually running around and save the world. That was not her role at all. She was present to one little baby at a time, one leper at a time, one person who needed her attention at a time. It was all about being intentional and being present as that incarnation of love being in this world. And that's what she did. And she used to say that to all of us, I've heard this many times from her and her community, that a drop of water that is not in the sea is a drop of water that is not in the sea. What do you think is the difference? A drop of water that is not in the sea is a drop of water that is not in the sea. Exactly the same sentence said twice, but it means completely two different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It may be that one tiny little thing of our silence and presence that matters, but it can change the world. It can be the light.
Right. I would agree with that. It's like, the old story of the butterfly flapping its wings and the wind goes through the world. And, you don't know if that small thing, and God uses those small things. I mean, I don't know what happened to that mother that I dealt with. I don't know if I made really any impact at all. But that was where I was in the moment. And that I felt like that was where I was supposed to be in that moment.
Right.
So that may have been my drop of water. I'm certainly not known throughout the world, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That question of, did I make a difference or did God make a difference through me?
Right.
Did I make a difference? Well, that doesn't really matter. But if God makes a difference and I am able to be a conduit or just one part of the machinery by which God does make a difference, then that is, that's important. That is me being a servant and doing my part without saving the world by myself.
But we all have this savior complex, we have to
absolutely.
save the world. I mean, I have to fight against it because as a pastor, it's my charge to make sure the world is changed. I have that complex. And so I have to tone down and say, Jos, just calm down. You're not the one doing changing the world. It is the Lord. And I just need to stand still and be quiet and listen.
And worse yet, am I doing enough to earn my paycheck?
Well, and I think that's part of our culture, too, is that, our culture is you're supposed to be busy all the time. You're supposed to be productive all the time, doing something worthwhile. And, I'm really, that's a struggle I'm having with coming into retirement it's okay to take that rest you talked about.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me today. Delighted to have you, Father Tim and Dr. Kathleen. And we are talking about being a lighthouse. Lighthouses don't go all over the place looking for some boats to save. Lighthouses stand still and allow the light to go out of itself and take the light and give it. And so that's what I want to invite you today. We are here at the Red Door with Father Tim and Dr. Kathleen, and I'm Father Jos. We would like to invite you to become the shining light of Christ so that the world will see in you Christ coming alive. You had been listening to the Red Door Conversations. Thank you for joining us today. Be safe if you are traveling. And the Red Door is the door of mercy. It is a door of kindness and acceptance and welcome of all people without worrying about who you are, where you had been, what has happened to you, or what your sexual preference is. None of those things matter. That's why you can enter through the Red Door no matter who you are, where you had been in life. We are a diverse group of people with total openness to all people of all gender and orientations, serving and being served. And that's the key, serving and being served at the altar in your homes. And so you can find us on the web at www.thereddoor.org. We want to tell you before we leave that we go off the air. Remember, you are the beloved of God. We believe it and you believe it because you are the beloved of God, and God is very pleased with you. Learn more about us at thereddoor.org. Once again, thank you for being with us. Visit us on the web, www.thereddoor.org. God bless you. Be safe.